In this video, we're going to talk about nations and states. When we talk about different regime types, we might use words like country or nation or state, and we use them interchangeably, but they all do have very specific meanings. For example, a nation refers to a group of people that share a common meaning and history, tradition, probably language as well. Think of your nationality. What you're talking about there is the community, whether it's real or imagined, the community that you feel attached to, that you feel that you belong to. That is a nation of people. Whereas a state is a political entity. Think of the political institutions that control a population and a territory. That's Max Weber's definition of a state. It has population, territory, and sovereignty over those, control over those. Think citizenship. What's on your passport, the state you belong to. So your nation, the people, the state is the political institutions. Now within that, there's some different organizational types. For example, we could have a nation state where the nation of people all reside within the same political entity. The state is home to a specific nation of people. When that happens, what you've got is a population pretty much sharing all of the same characteristics. Japan, homeland for ethnically Japanese people. Greece, over 90% of the population, Greek. Albania, almost all the population, Albanian. So those would be nation states. Within that context, the government works to promote the interest of the nation, and they are often synonymous. Key point here is that the ethnic borders and the political borders are the same. Now there's also the idea of a binational state. Binational state where there can be two nations living within a political boundary. For example, Belgium would be an example of a binational state. There is a Dutch-speaking component of the population and a French-speaking component of the population. Government works to protect both nationalities, both identities. In fact, there's power sharing agreement, consociational power sharing agreement that ensures both groups are represented in the national government. Also possible to have a multinational state, where the state is home to multiple linguistic or ethnic groups. Canada could be an example of this, where there is an English nation, or at least at the founding there was an English nation, and a French nation. These two groups of people that thought they were living together in the Canadian state. Turns out there was actually a lot more nations, over 600 First Nations, indigenous groups, all of which have their own unique identities, languages, and customs. And others, many people that, because Canada is a settler society, many people come from elsewhere to live in Canada. A lot of people have specific ethnic identities in addition to their attachment to the state. So they will have a shared sort of sense of belonging, but also a citizenship as well. That sometimes happens in a multinational state where people might have different layers of identities. Also the idea of civic nationalism, where the identity is built around citizenship. And instead of having a shared sort of ethnic and historical and cultural tradition, it is the political institutions that give meaning to the nation. And here's an example is the United States. The United States was a civic creation. Somebody drew lines on a map one day and said, we're going to call this the United States. Here are the rules for belonging. And one of those rules was birthright citizenship. The idea that if you're born here, you're American, and there's a certain sort of pride and belonging that goes with that. That's a type of civic nationalism that isn't necessarily rooted in a shared ethnic or cultural tradition. It is also possible to have a nation of people that do not have a specific state that they belong to or identify with. For example, the French nationalist movement in Canada was an example of the French people that did not feel represented by the government of Canada, wanted their own country where they could belong and live as a nation state. Another example might be the Kurdish people. Kurdistan is not a country. However, the Kurdish nation of people lives in a region they call Kurdistan that actually is within the boundaries of Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So the Kurdish people would love to have their own state called Kurdistan. However, they do not. They are essentially a people, a stateless nation, people without a state. To recap here, different types of states. We've got the nation state, where you've got the nation and the state belonging together, a binational state where you've got two nations living within a state, and a multinational state where you can have multiple nations within a state. also possible to have states without borders. But the key difference here is that the nation is the people, the state is the political institution. Now, there are many others. There's ecclesiastical states, city states, lots of them that we're not going to address. But as long as we can differentiate between the nation and the state, we can help make sense of different regime types.